Major sponsors for Ableton On Air include Washington County Mental Health, where hope and support come together. Media sponsors for Ableton On Air include Parkchester Times, Muslim Community Report, www.thisisthebronx.info, Associated Press Media Editors, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, U.S. Press Corps Domestic and International, Anchor FM, and Spotify. Partners for Ableton On Air include Yahad of New York and New England, where everyone belongs, the Orthodox Union, the Division for the Blind and Visually Impaired of Vermont, the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Central Vermont Habitat for Humanity, Montefiore Medical Center of the Bronx, Rose F. Kennedy Center of Bronx, New York, Albert Einstein College of Medicine of the Bronx. Ableton On Air has been seen in the following publications: Parkchester Times, www.thisisthebronx.com, New York Parrot Online Newspaper, Muslim Community Report, www.h.com, and the Montpelier Bridge. Ableton On Air is part of the following organizations: the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, Boston, New England chapter, and the Society of Professional Journalists. Coming up on this edition of Ableton On Air, we talk about people with disabilities and their inventions, past or present. All that and much more when Ableton On Air starts right now. Welcome to this edition of Ableton On Air, the one and only program that focuses on the needs, concerns, and achievements of the differently able. I'm your host, Lawrence Seiler. On this television program, today we talk about people with disabilities and their inventions, past or present, scientists and the like. I'm Lawrence Seiler. Let's begin by thanking our sponsors and partners, the Division for the Blind Vermont, the Association for the Blind Vermont, and many, many, many others. Okay, so let's begin on this show today. This comes from projectenable.syr.edu/disability and inventions and innovation scientists with disabilities. Disability and innovation scientists with disabilities who have changed the world. Throughout history, scientists have made incredible inventions and innovations and discoveries. When you think of famous scientists, past or present, Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein may come to mind. But did you know that these scientists have a disability? Thomas Edison was deaf in one ear and hard of hearing, in the other. Nikola Tesla had an obsessive-compulsive disorder. Albert Einstein arguably is the most famous scientist in the 20th century who had dyslexia. Below are brief biographies of just a few of them are scientists with disabilities whose inventions and discoveries have made the world a better place. So let's go down the list. Florence B. Siebert was a biochemist. By the way, her name is spelled Seibert, was a biochemist. Florence was born in Pennsylvania on October 6, 1897. While she was a child, she caught polio. At the same time, she had mobility issues which affected her ability to walk without a limp. Florence earned her BA in 1918 in chemistry and zoology. She also earned her PhD in biochemistry in 1923. During her graduate work with Dr. Lafayette, with Dr. Laviette Mendel. She worked to eliminate and alleviate bacterial contamination that took place during the creation and solutions to vaccines and injections. Because of this, patients had common symptoms such as sudden fevers, illness during or after the injection. Florence discovered a way to eliminate the contamination using special equipment and a procedure that would help make blood transfusions safer. After spending a couple of years teaching at the University of Chicago, she took an assistant professor job at the University of Pennsylvania Henry Phipps Institute, and this institute. Hold on, it was the institute of that Florence created that purified. It was at the institute that Florence created the purified protein derivative, or PPD, which would eventually become the basis of standard tuberculosis tests. She began and gained the full rank of professor in 1959, and in 1990 was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. She died on August 23rd, 1991. Ralph Braun was born on December 18, 1940 in Willimack, Indiana. Ralph was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy at age 6. Muscular dystrophy causes weakness and affects muscle mass. He began using a wheelchair at age 13. Ralph sometimes was known as the father of the mobility movement, credited by his parents for determination to have an education and career and live an independent life. The first invention he created was a motorized scooter called a tri-wheeler. Ralph created this type of wheelchair that would have more mobility to keep his job as an inspector of a local factory. This caught the attention of people with disabilities, and he began making custom orders. The small shop eventually moved out of his parents' garage into a commercial location. When the Chrysler Corporation developed a full-size minivan, Ralph came up with a way to allow for wheelchair users to be able to drive by creating the first wheelchair lift and establishing the Braun Corporation in 1972, which made his company different in that each wheelchair was customized to the user rather than developed to set a standard. Developed to set a standard. Ralph was awarded the Champion of Change honor by the White House in 2012 for his contributions to improving the lives of people with disabilities. He passed away on February 8th, 2013. Wanda Diaz Merced, Merced, born in Guaybao, Puerto Rico, is an astrophysicist. When she was a child, Wanda liked to pretend she was an astronaut. She won a prize at a science fair, and which resulted of her wanting to continue in the field. Wanda began to lose Wanda began to lose her sight during her teenage years and lost it completely while she was in undergraduate school studying physics at the University of Puerto Rico. One of Wanda's friends played an audio recording of a solar flare, for her, which inspired her to study astronomy. She interned at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland and completed a PhD in computer science at the University of Glasgow, Scotland in 2013. Wanda created a new look at space and stars using a technique called sonification. In her work, sonification converts visual data such as brightness and frequency and radiation into audible data such as pitch, volume, and rhythm. Using her research, Wanda was able to demonstrate using a combination of visual and audio data to help detect black holes, usually than just using visual data. George Washington Carver. How many? That's a long list. Okay. George Washington Carver was born into slavery in New County, Missouri, sometime in the 1860s. When he was a week old, George's sister and mother was kidnapped by a band of slave riders, and they were sold in Kentucky. His master, Moses Carver, hired a neighbor to find them. Only ended up finding George. George only ended up finding George. Moses and his wife raised George with their son that taught him to read and write. When he was a child, George got sick with whooping cough and never quite recovered. He had trouble breathing and frequently had health issues. George was disappointed. George was disappointed in the quality of schooling and moved often. He eventually graduated college from Minneapolis High School. Graduated college from Minneapolis High School in Minneapolis, Kansas in 1880. He became the first African American to earn a bachelor's degree in science in 1864 at Iowa State University, studying botany. He also received his master's in agriculture in 1896. George created different techniques to improve the soil. He urged farmers to rotate their crops, altering between cotton, sweet potatoes, and beans, legumes. The crops helped improve nitrogen in the soil in order to train new farmers, resulting in farmers having to improve cotton selection. And an alternative to cash crops. George died on January 5th, 1943. At Minneapolis, Kansas in 1880, he became the first African American to earn a bachelor's degree in 1864. Hold on, I think I'm repeating the same. At Iowa State University, studying botany, he received his master's in agriculture in 1896. I'm sorry if I'm repeating the same thing. Okay. And then there's another one down here. John Jack Robert Horner. John Jack Robert Horner was born on June 15th, 1946 in Montana. He had a rough childhood, and as a young boy, John was introverted and not shy and not wanting to hang out with people his age. Part of this reason is that he had dyslexia. His classmates would bully him. John described life in grade school. Difficult. Everybody called him dumb. But he knew this at an early age, and that he can only do things other students couldn't do. He commented that the school was hard because reading and writing was extremely slow for him. His mother's support encouraged John to follow projects which helped him gain awards in science and science fair projects. In 1965, John flunked out of the University of Montana. He was drafted by the Marines. He spent time in the reconnaissance in Vietnam. He served for 2 years and 14 months before he returned to school to try again. John took geology and zoology classes that pertain to paleontology. He also took archaeology and microbiology classes. His advisor believed in him and helped him with his studies. However, he dropped out in 1972. John didn't give up his dream job. He applied to a bunch of museums for any job that was willing to hire him. He was accepted a position at Princeton University's Natural History Museum as a technician. After the museum, he noticed his knowledge and expertise and dedication and moved up to research assistant and eventually managed his own projects. It was during the mid-1970s that John and a colleague discovered the first concrete evidence in that dinosaurs cared for their young. He also discovered and named the dinosaur Maisura, can't pronounce it, and was awarded an honorary doctorate in science in 1986 for his contributions in the scientific community. John currently works at Chaplin University as a presidential fellow. Fun fact, he also served as technical advisor for the Jurassic Park films and had a cameo appearance in Jurassic World. And I'm going to go over one or two other inventions here. Hold on. I think I spelled it wrong. Let's talk about the hearing aid invention. The first electric hearing aid, the Aquaphone, was invented in 1898 by Miller Reach Hutchinson. It uses a carbon transmitter. It also amplifies sound. Ear trumpets were considered the earliest form of hearing aids that date back to the 17th century. Ear trumpets were the first devices used to amplify sound for people with hearing loss, dating back to 17th century, and were essentially funnels that directed sound into the ear. The Aquaphone, 1898, Miller Reach Hutchinson's invention, the Aquaphone was the first portable electric hearing aid. It was a carbon transmitter used to amplify sound and was a significant step forward to hearing aid technology. 1920s, the vacuum tube hearing aid. Earl Hansen patented the first vacuum tube hearing aid. The Aquaphone, which further miniaturized the technology. 1948, the transistor hearing aids. Transistor hearing aids were first introduced in the 1950s, were a significant advancement over previous vacuum tube models due to their smaller size, lower power consumption, and reduced heat generation. These transistor hearing aids were the first to be worn entirely in the ear and paved the way to further miniaturization and improve the performance of hearing aid technology. Okay, and that's the show today on this edition of Ableton on Air on inventions and people with disabilities. For more information on anything you've seen today, you can go to www.orcamedia.net. That's www.orcamedia.net. I'm Lawrence Seiler. See you next time.